My name is Whytli, and I am a survivor of anxiety and depression. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been emotional and kind of dramatic. I've always had a sensitive side and felt things on a deeper level. From a young age, I would get hyped up about things and my dad would have to talk me off a ledge. So I feel like I was kind of prone to have anxiety from a young age. And on top of that, mental illness runs in my family. A lot of my extended family members deal with anxiety and depression and other illnesses, so I guess you could say it was in my blood from the start. And my mental illness wasn't really situational because I have a good family and I have a great life. So I didn't choose for this to happen. I didn't choose to be this way. It wasn't my fault. But I remember having depressed moods as early as 7th grade, but I didn't really do anything about it. I didn't talk to my parents. And then it got a lot worse in March of 2017. I would have huge anxiety attacks in my car before school, and I wouldn't be able to actually make it into school because I'd be hyperventilating and sobbing. And then I would have anxiety about those anxiety attacks. I didn't want anyone to witness that, and I didn't want anyone to see me at my lowest, worst point. And I think it was hard for me a lot of days to go to school and put on a face and pretend like I was okay, because from the outside it would appear like everything is fine and that I have it all together, but really I was struggling and fighting this battle inside my head. And so when I was feeling all of these, deep emotions, it was hard to put on a face at school. And so I isolated myself from all my friends, and I made up excuses after excuses about why I was missing so much school and why I couldn't hang out, when in reality I was in my bed crying most days. So when it got to this point, I agreed to see a doctor, therapist, and psychiatrist, and we tried so many different medications, but they just weren't working for me. Majority of them kind of did the reverse effect and amplified my anxiety and depression and just made everything a lot worse. A lot of things that would seem so simple and normal were life and death for me, and to the point where I was kind of having suicidal thoughts and had attempted suicide a couple of times. I would be driving my car and have thoughts of wanting to crash it and end things. There were times when family members had to tackle me down and pin me down to stop me from harming myself. And then there was a time over the summer where some friends and I were trespassing, and we climbed this abandoned 400-foot tower, and at the top all I could think about is how easy it would be to jump and end all of this misery and pain that I was going through, and I wouldn't have to feel like this anymore. So at that point I knew that I had to talk to my parents about those thoughts that I was having in order to keep myself safe, even though it was really hard to talk about. So a suicide safety watch plan was put in place to keep me safe through all of that. And when I was going through all of this, I would get very frustrated and kind of angry when multiple people said over and over to me, everything will work out, you'll be okay, because I didn't feel okay and I didn't feel like it was getting any better. And so that just made me feel more alone and made me feel like no one understood what I was going through, and no one understood the thoughts that I was having. They didn't make sense to anyone else but me. And so it was just kind of a lonely thing to go through, I guess. So through the whole year dealing with this, I went through a lot of trial and error with the medication until finally something worked for me. and it stabilized things to the point where I wasn't having paralyzing anxiety and I wasn't having long periods of depressive states. But I still wasn't myself, and I was kind of in this middle numb state because I feel like you can't rely 100% on the medication to just cure you. You have to meet it halfway, and you have to do your part mentally. You have to put in the work, but I wasn't really doing that until something clicked when someone else who was suffering had said, it's okay to not be okay, but you can't stay that way. And something just shifted in me, and I came to this realization that no one else can fix my problems, and no one understands the full extent to what I'm going through, and I can't get better for someone else. I have to want to get better for myself, and I have to work on myself, by myself, for myself. And so I had to learn to love myself again, because through my mental illness, I didn't like the person that I had become. I had a lot of negative self-doubt and just self-hate through it all. And so I had to work hard and make a conscious effort to combat those negative thoughts and retrain my brain to think differently about myself. I had to make my mental health my first priority and do whatever it took to feel better and just kind of explore all of those options and resources. I had to change my habits. I need 8 hours of sleep every night, and if I don't get that, I have a really bad day and get really depressed. So I have to make self-care and self-love part of my daily routine and really focus on that. And my motto through all of this was, you have to grow through what you go through, because you can't really get through the journey unless you're growing and you're changing the way you think and you're changing your actions and what you're doing. But it's not like I have everything figured out, because I know that I'll be struggling with this anxiety and maybe depression the rest of my life. It's not like you just figure things out and it's smooth sailing from there. It's always going to be an up and down journey. You're going to have good days and bad days. I still have anxiety attacks and I still have down days, but there's just a difference that I know how to deal with it, and I know how to pick myself back up, and I know how to go through it, I guess. So there's just a difference in that. I'm so passionate about this End the Stigma Foundation because when kids and friends at school kind of found out that I was struggling with anxiety and depression, they treated me differently, and they were walking on eggshells around me, and I didn't like that because I'm still a normal teenager. My mental illness doesn't define me. I'm still myself, and so I think it's important that we end the stigma around the word mental illness, because we need to create a community where people who are suffering feel safe to talk about it and to get help. And I feel like people don't, a lot of times people don't really address the problem of mental illness until something severe has happened. But it's just as important to, get the help now before something severe happens to you. And so I'm passionate about helping others through their journey because I know how lonely it is and I know how hard it is to deal with it. And so I just want to say to anyone who is suffering that you're not alone, and even though it doesn't feel like it right now, you will be okay and you can get through this.